Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:06 here on O'Connor and Company, this final hour of our final broadcast of 2023, and we are going out strong. Coming up in 30 minutes, Christian Toto of Hollywood and Toto will be our guest. Talk about your entertainment choices over this holiday weekend. I'm Larry O'Connor, alongside Julie Gunlock, who's been fighting with me all morning, and it's upsetting. It's very upsetting. Good morning, Julie.
Oh, you're so delicate.
Well, no, I mean, your Ohio State Buckeyes are playing in a college football game. What are you guys in, the Cheez-Its Bowl today or something?
I don't remember.
Yeah, exactly. It's not super memorable, but
it's not entirely me driving this.
You'll be playing football. I know you married a Buckeye. You got to deal with it.
I'm a loyal wife.
The Michigan Wolverines, of course, 3-time champions of the Big Ten, will be playing in the Rose Bowl game against Alabama on New Year's Day. Yeah, we got to solve this. Scott Walker, he's a good Big Ten guy. He's a Wisconsin guy. He can help us out here. Governor Walker, good morning. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.
Happy New Year.
You're rooting for Michigan, right?
You're in heaven because you got the Lions are doing well, and
tell me about it.
Michigan doing well. Look out!
It is a beautiful time to be a Michigan football fan, and you agree. I mean, you're a Big Ten guy, but you're going to root for Michigan, aren't you? You root for the conference.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as much as you have your rivalries, in the end, it's all about the Big Ten.
Yeah. I mean, unless it's.
Although it'd be hard for me, I got to tell you, it was a little hard though rooting for Rutgers. That might be a little bit odd. It just seems so out of place. But
yeah, but they beat Miami. How great was that last night? The worst team in the Big Ten that made it to a bowl game, at least, beat Miami in the whatever game that was in New York at the Yankees. Anyway, Governor Walker, thanks for joining. I got to think. I'm a electronic journalist in the media. When I'm watching somebody conduct an interview on television or listening on the radio, and they're not doing it the way I think they should, I start yelling back at the radio. I got to think professional athletes do the same thing. As a elected Republican who was one of the most effective communicators for conservative values as governor of Wisconsin and now as president of Young America's Foundation, when you saw Nikki Haley ask that question about the Civil War, were you yelling back at the day, Nikki, God, let me in there, I'll handle this for you?
Well, particularly, I don't know if you saw my tweet after that.
I did, yeah.
Joe Biden decided to pile on, and I'm like, hey, let's just be clear, a little history lesson for everybody, not just the voters in New Hampshire. It was the Democrats who wanted to expand slavery to the Western territories. Republicans actually started their party in my state in Ripon, Wisconsin, because we opposed that.
Yes.
What a teaching moment to point that out. Oh.
Yeah.
That wasn't hard.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's not hard. So, I mean, given that, because up until and I know a lot of people say, well, this won't make a big difference. I think this has less to do about slavery in the Civil War. I think it's revealing of what kind of candidate Nikki Haley is, frankly. And now we're 17 days away from the Iowa caucuses. We're a little over 3 weeks from the New Hampshire primary. What are you looking at right now in this race, or is it already over?
Well, it's been over since that first debate in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, back in August that you joined us at. I like Nikki. Nikki's a friend of mine. We were both governors at the same time. I think she's was an excellent governor. I think she did a good job as an ambassador. But there was a little bit of a bump that came out of that first debate in Milwaukee because I would argue for similar reasons to much of the appeal to President Trump, and that is because it felt authentic. It felt like she just said what she thought. She didn't care about what people thought. She didn't care what else was going on. She was going to say what she thought, and I think there were people out there that liked that. I think the reveal in the comments the other day in New Hampshire are now suddenly a candidate who's starting to see a bit of movement, at least in New Hampshire, and is starting to worry about everything they say, to overthink it, to not say what's on their mind. And that's more damning than the subject matter, because to me, the only appeal, I got asked a question from Politico just yesterday about, establishment money and big money and whether or not their influence is gone. I said Nikki Haley's rise, at least in New Hampshire, was never about who was backing her financially. It was about whether or not voters perceived her as being forthright, as being candid, as being the real deal. And this starts to chip away at that. Whereas Donald Trump, whether you agree with everything or not, he's not influenced by anybody. And that's appealing to a lot of voters, particularly in the primary.
Well, I'd love to get your thoughts on this latest action in Maine of removing Trump from the ballot. It seems like Democrats see this as the path forward, and obviously see Trump as a major threat. What are your thoughts on this latest action?
Yeah, to protect democracy, we have to end democracy, right? We have to take it apart. Yeah. I mean, it's so utterly ridiculous. First in Colorado, now in Maine. I think probably most of your listeners would agree with this as well, and that is not just that it's outrageous, but that it's ultimately going to backfire. Mm-hmm. I mean, this will do nothing more than embolden primary voters, and I think even a lot of discerning voters in a state like mine who go, I don't always like all the chaos. I don't like all the things. I don't like the tweets in the past, but there's something out there that's wrong about. There's so many people in positions of establishment, positions of power, who are trying to block this guy from even being on the ballot. Maybe there's something to that. So I think it backfires for sure in the primary, and I think it probably does even in the general election.
So I got to ask you, because you spend so much time now as the president and leader of Young America's Foundation, and I'm so glad that you are in that position, because when everybody wrings their hands about what's going on college campuses, and Lord knows we've seen plenty displayed in the last 6 weeks at our elite Ivy League universities, and when people worry about the future of the conservative movement and the future of this country because, look at where those young people have gone. Governor Walker, you and the organization at YAF, you're actually doing something about it. You're actually getting in there and being proactive. So where do you think things stand right now with younger voters or younger almost voters as they see the lay of the land and they see the fact? I mean, I've got teenage kids, and they look at the White House right now, and they are not inspired by the leadership we have.
Boy, that's an understatement. You're exactly right about that. I mean, YF.org, if people are listening, need help, we got your back if you're under attack, college, high school, even middle school now. But the polling, we do polling all the time, not to change our positions, but rather to see where we got work to do. And we got work to do for sure, although the good news is, even on college campuses, most of this influence, most of the negative stuff, the nonsense that you see when you see polling that shows how many young people, 18 to 29-year-old voters, for example, who actually think there's some merit to what Osama bin Laden said. That is just a bold-faced lie that they're being taught by some on campuses and some in social media, particularly in TikTok. We got to push back against that. Having said that, even as misguided as they are there, or just plain out wrong, they are totally underwhelmed by Joe Biden. You see a huge drop-off in terms of support amongst younger voters who just think this guy's an idiot, who think he can't do anything, who think he needs a vacation from a vacation. I mean, there's major, major problems in the White House when it comes to younger voters.
So which candidate do you think is best poised to take advantage of that right now? Because it's not just an age thing, right? I mean, young voters love Bernie Sanders, and he's older than all of them.
Right, because they view him as being competent. It's not just an old guy. Is the guy capable of doing things? And to your point about being inspired, when they're worked up about, I think incorrectly, about things like Palestine and other issues, they get a mixed message at best from Joe Biden all over the place on this. They see what I think the rest of us see, and that is a guy who is, who's exceeded expectations in my regard. I thought he'd be a horrible president. He's exceeded my expectations. This guy is out of control, and I think younger voters see through that. Now, are most of them going to go to Donald Trump? No, they're not. Their ideological bent right now, at least until we get in and make some more changes, isn't towards a Republican. But if they sit home in a state like Wisconsin, where I'm obviously from, 23,000 votes was the difference out of nearly 6 million people in the state. Suddenly you get a couple percentage points of younger voters not voting, at least not for president. That's the difference right there. In Wisconsin, in Michigan, Georgia, in Arizona, that could be the difference in the race.
Governor Scott Walker, 2024 is going to be so big in every possible respect, not just the presidential election, but a potential impeachment, potential trials of Donald Trump. There's going to be crazy conventions on both sides. We are looking forward to having you as part of our team and one of the most important voices in this country to speak to these issues since you've been there. We appreciate you joining us, and a Happy New Year to you and your great family.
Happy New Year. Keep fighting for freedom.
It's 8:15. Well, Julie Gunlock. I love that Scott Walker. He's a nice guy. Don't you think?
Yeah.
And he also confirmed the fact that your husband should set aside his hatred of Michigan and rally around the Big Ten. You want the Big Ten to win the championship, even if it's that team up north.
Okay.
You know, this is my third year in a row now with Michigan going into the football championships, and they have lost in the first round every time. Do you think maybe this year will be different? Do you think that Tuesday I'm just going to act like nothing happened and say, well,
yes,
we'll talk about football next year? If Michigan beats Alabama on Monday, do you know how insufferable I will be Tuesday morning?
I know.
It's going to be awful. So this is good practice for you. Look at you chewing your nails. You're so stressed about it.
If I can broadcast with COVID, I can broadcast with you gloating for a little while. So
remind me, though, is Darren also a Cleveland Browns fan?
I don't think so.
Just the Buckeyes?
Yes.
All right. Because the Browns are in the playoffs now, and here's the remarkable world that we're living in.
I'm not a huge football person, but the fact that I didn't know that probably says he's not a big Browns fan.
That's probably true. We could be I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we could be looking at a Super Bowl between the Detroit Lions and the Cleveland Browns, the two most hapless, losingest football franchises in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, even I know that.
I'm not sure how to feel about that. All right, let's get to what have we got? Oh, we've got a couple of stories here related to the terror attacks of October 7th. First, as mentioned earlier, we did have confirmation now of a American killed by the Hamas terrorists, yet another American. And for hours, we heard nothing from the Biden administration, from the president himself. There was, I want to reiterate, we had confirmation yesterday that another American citizen, was murdered by Hamas. And this president said nothing for hours. And finally, when he did, it was a written statement on social media that was as vanilla can be, that was just delivered while he was sunning himself on a patio in St. Croix, Virginia.
Well, and it turns out that this person was killed on October 7th, but it has taken months to find out. And note that these Americans, this was a husband and wife, and they were taken hostage and they were murdered on the same day. They were out for a morning walk outside of their kibbutz, and they were murdered by these horrible Hamas terrorists.
Yeah.
And you think about, but they didn't know they were dead. Their family did not know. There was no information. They now have their bodies, or I think one body is still being kept. But the bottom line is, the White House was largely silent about this. There wasn't daily advocating to find out what was going on with these Americans. And frankly, they're still silent on the hostages. I mean, there's a baby being kept, a mother and her two kids that are still being kept by Hamas, not to mention other hostages. And the White House doesn't mention them. But they do talk about a ceasefire, and they do talk about, blaming Israel.
Right, blaming constant, would the U.S. ever tolerate a foreign nation admonishing us and lecturing us about how to execute a war in response to a terror attack? Ever? And yet, Benjamin, I got a question for you. Why did Japan never again bomb a U.S. military base after World War II? Why has Germany not threatened any of her neighbors since 1945? Why? Two words: unconditional surrender. Yeah. We fought that war to win that war and to defeat the enemy once and for all. And then we were part of reconstructing that country. And we were able to say, no, you can't be in the new government. You are, in fact, go stand over there.
And you're
going to go rot in a cell.
What kind of government? We're going to decide what kind of
That's
government.
right. We'll set this up for you, and we'll be out. And the second you step out of line, we will do exactly what we did to win this war in the first place. That's how you wage, execute, and win a war.
And oh goodness, and it's been so horrible for the Japanese and for the Germans, who have thriving independent countries now, where their people have water and electricity and all sorts of things.
And when people saw the casualties that the Japanese people suffered and the German people suffered, they didn't say, how dare you, England and France and America, do this to them. No, they said, damn you, Hitler, for putting your people through this.
Yes.
Damn you, Hirohito, for putting your people through this.
Yes.
This was your... You decide to start a war, and then suddenly the people you waged war on start defeating you and annihilating you and bulldozing your homes and killing your people. A civilized leader stands up with a white flag and say, okay, we give up. Stop killing our people. We surrender. That's what Japan and Germany ultimately did. Israel is waging a war to win the war so they don't have to fight another war.
And now Israel has to also fight the UN.
Right.
And has to fight all these international organizations, not to mention these liberal governments who criticize them, and liberal politicians who criticize them instead of backing them for doing exactly what the United States did.
And we have reached this ridiculous point in world history where the likes of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Anthony Blinken, and Jake Sullivan are lecturing someone like Benjamin Netanyahu about how properly to fight a war. A man who has been fighting, literally in uniform on the battlefield, fighting since the early 1970s to keep his people safe. And he's supposed to listen to Joe Biden?
Well, this is but this is the Democrats. I mean, look at the Shenna Bellows in Maine, who decided, I'm taking Trump off the ballot because it's good for everyone.
Yeah, we're lecturing them about freedom and democracy.
But honestly, like, forget the rule of law. Forget, I'm the smart one in the room. I'm a Democrat. I'll decide for everyone else. This is their playbook. This is how they operate.
Get out of Israel's way. Let them fight this war to win it. And if you feel listen, I feel terrible about civilian casualties. That's why I am angry at the leadership, the Hamas leadership in Gaza, who these same civilians elected, by the way, and overwhelmingly support. I am outraged that they do not do the civilized thing, surrender and protect their people by stopping this war.
Yeah, I'm also really tired of this. The Gazans are all innocent. I mean, we've got some evidence now, and the New York Times is actually reporting on this as well, that some of those hostages were taken and held by Palestinian civilians, not Gaza, not put in tunnels by Gaza. They were kidnapped and held by so-called Palestinian Gazan citizens. I'm tired of this. I am tired of this idea that they're just victims and it's Israel's fault. No, there was a lot of sort of wink and nod in Gaza with what Hamas planned and did.
Yep. All right. And that's all we have to say about that. It's 8:25. All right, coming up, Christian Toto, Hollywood in Toto, will tell you what you can and can't expect from this big holiday weekend in the world of film and entertainment. Keep it here. It's 8:36 on O'Connor and Company. This Friday, the 29th day of December, we're ramping up here for a new year. It's a holiday weekend. And for a lot of people, Julie Gunlock, a holiday weekend means time to go to the movies. When was the last time you went to the movies?
It's been a while, but my kids went yesterday.
I think the last time I was actually in a movie theater. Oh no, I took my son last year to see the Mario Brothers movie.
Oh, cute! Yeah,
that was fun, and we enjoyed it. That was actually a fun movie. It's like, imagine if Disney could make animated films like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just focused on entertaining. And I'm planning. I want to see that. Well, let me ask Christian Toto about this. I don't know if he's seen this movie or not. Christian Toto is with us. Hollywood and Toto podcast, Hollywood and Toto website. Good morning. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, Christian.
Oh, right back at you. Thanks.
So The Boys in the Boat. This looks really good. This looks like the American version of Chariots of Fire.
Chariots of Fire. Yeah, that's what my kids saw yesterday. They loved it.
They did? Your kids just saw it? Did they love it?
Yep, they loved it.
What do you think, Christian?
I have seen it yet. This is from George Clooney, whose directorial debut was very exciting, and it's been less and less exciting ever since. The reviews have not been kind, but you know what? The audience reviews last time I checked, we're in the mid to high 90s. So I think this is a feel-good, true story that may connect with audiences much more than critics. So, I haven't seen it. I just want to give people the shake of what they could expect. Yeah.
That said, it's a big weekend for movies, firstly because it's a holiday, but also this is sort of the deadline for Oscar movies. So what do you see and what's on your radar?
Well, it's a little tricky sometimes because some of the movies that are out now may not be in every part of the country. Some may be in D.C., some may not be in D.C. One I want to draw attention to is American Fiction with Jeffrey Wright. It's a comedy, it's a satire, and it looks at a black author who is frustrated because he can't get his book published. So he dashes off a quick book that's very, to say, stereotypically black, and he's doing it on purpose. He wants to almost mock the industry for wanting dumb stories like this that don't really speak to the true black experience. And then it's a hit, and literary sensation. It's very funny. It's a little uneven at times. Yeah, but it's very smart, it's very wise, and it certainly pokes a lot of holes in essentially liberal pieties when it comes to black representation and culture and the literary realm. So I think it's going to already making some noise in award season circles, and it could get a couple of nominations. And Jeffrey Wright is excellent as well.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to you, too, about the fact that Hollywood seems to have no imagination anymore. They're either doing remakes, which are terrible, or they're doing this sort of silly, like apparently some studio has bought the rights to Monopoly. So they're going to be making a Monopoly movie. Or, look, I know some people got joy out of Barbie and all this stuff, but, talk to me a little bit about how Hollywood just doesn't seem to have any new good ideas.
Well, it's true. A little bit of that is our fault, though, because we don't often go rushing out to see the original movies. Migration's out in theaters now. Wish is out in theaters. Both animated movies that are based on nothing, based on, just a new tale. And they're both struggling a bit. And, when you have that brand recognition, that is what is the coin of the realm in Hollywood right now. So even though it may seem silly to say, oh, they're going to make a Monopoly movie, people know Monopoly. They've loved it for years, and their interest is peaked right away. So I think that's why it's happening. And there was a Twitter feed or a list out recently of all the sequels coming in 2024. There's a lot of them. And we just haven't broken the spell. But the one good thing is that this past year we've seen Fast X. It didn't flop. It just didn't do big business. The new Mission Impossible, not as big as we thought. So, there may be some tiring going on where we're just a little bit exhausted by all these reboots and sequels.
Christian Toto is our guest. Hollywood and Toto, one of the most guiltiest studios, if I could use that word, of the retreads and not coming up with new ideas is Disney. I mean, whether it's trying to rejuvenate the Indiana Jones brand or milking whatever drop of blood from the stone that is the Marvel superhero movies, or remaking all of their old animated movies into live-action movies. There's just no new ideas. And if they do have a new idea, it's a flop. So you look back on 2023 at Disney, and it is epic in how bad it was.
Yeah, I think it goes beyond entertainment. I think business executives and professors who study the field will look back at this year and think, what did they do? But of course, it's not accidental, and it wasn't the first year that they've been suffering. But Disney has lost the plot. They've gotten very politically active. They're promoting diversity at almost all costs. There are so many horror stories I hear behind the scenes. People who can't speak on the record because they get in trouble about what's happening there and the atmosphere within the company. The bottom line is that Disney was a bulletproof brand. They made a wonderful product. It wasn't always great, but it was family friendly. It was sweet. It was uplifting. And then when they acquired Pixar and the MCU, it just seemed like this huge company could do no wrong. But boy, all they did this year was wrong.
Yeah.
The Marvels and Haunted Mansion and Wish. The list of flops goes on. And I think we're starting to also get exhausted with these live action movies like Little Mermaid. It was fine, but unnecessary.
Yeah. I think also American audience, worldwide audiences are a little tired of the wokeification of every remake, and there's a great I think it was early '90s show called The Buccaneers. It's now been remade as this horror show of woke virtue signaling. They're even doing it with Agatha Christie, BBC. Are people tired of that? And why does that seem to be the only reason to remake a movie is to remake it in a way that's more woke?
I think they are tired of that, but I think it goes to a significant issue with it. There's nothing wrong on paper with being diverse, nothing wrong. But when the focus is so heavily on this DEI sentiment, you get people like Claudine Gay, who are wildly unqualified for the role at Harvard. But that's not an isolated incident. I'm making the tangent on purpose because if you're in Team Disney and that is your prime directive, maybe you don't hire the best and brightest at the time. Right. Not that people who are diverse can't be the best and brightest, but when the focus is on that so exclusively, things get lost. And I think look at Harvard, look at Gay's credentials; they're terrible, and that's beyond the plagiarism. So I think that sentiment, while well-meaning, gets twisted and curled.
Christian Toto, we got to leave it there, but it's always good to talk to you, my friend. Thanks for wrapping up our year for us, and we look for great things. You continue to create them over at HollywoodandToto.com and the podcast Hollywood and Toto. Thank you, sir.
Happy New Year.
Thanks so much.
It's 8:43. Julie Gunlock brought this story to my attention, so I thought that we should probably spend a little time on it. According to the New York Post, there's a new fashion trend for 2024. Big butts for men. And by the way, I know a lot of men who were friends of mine who were big trendsetters. They were way ahead of the game on this. But they didn't acquire their big butts via squats, unless you say sitting at a Burger King and wolfing down a couple of Whoppers in one sitting is doing a squat.
What I love about this is that they're calling it the fitness trend for 2024. So we're talking Kardashian level sort of bubble butts on men are apparently the big trend. Don't do this. Do not do this.
Butt boosting workouts, the hottest fitness trend for men. Generally speaking, men's bodies, the ideal that the people try to put out there that men should strive for, have to do with sort of a tiny waist and tiny hips and sort of a firm but less substantial. Less substantial posterior. Well, listen, I've had to deal with body dysphoria.
It's an upside down triangle.
There you go. The upside down triangle.
Broad shoulders, muscular shoulders, big chest.
Yes.
Tiny
waist
hips.
and butt.
That tends to be. But I mean, these days, my goodness, Larry.
But now they want the bubble butt.
I'm so confused.
I'll be honest with you. Can I be brutally honest?
You can be Are you ever anything but brutally honest?
I never really bought into the whole big butt trend for women.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There's just so many female body parts that I can spend my time being attracted to. And so I have to prioritize them. And the butt ends up being lower on the list for me. Every man has different tastes.
I know. Everybody has their...
I got a couple of other body parts that rise higher to the top, as it were.
Well, I mean, for
than the
hundreds
big
of years,
Kardashian butt.
For hundreds of years, it was sort of the hourglass. Well, I mean, millions. I don't
know.
It was like
hourglass.
The hourglass.
Absolutely.
Right? You have the small waist and then the bigger other parts.
Yeah.
Right?
To fill out that hourglass.
Right.
Yeah.
And men traditionally have larger shoulders and more narrow. It's because of, women have, the birthing hips, right? And men are more narrow down by the hips. But now everything, with all this gender stuff, Larry, everything's confused.
Exactly. I guess that's part of it. I mean, here's the thing. If you think about, which I don't very often, but if you think about gay men.
Yeah.
And what they might be physically attracted to, I would think that the butt plays a big part.
Okay. Anyway, so you know what I want in a man?
What?
If you get to say, I just want a guy who can fix the Wi-Fi and the dishwasher without me calling and I got it. Darren is always tinkering with things.
You have the perfect man. And by the way, I've seen a nice butt.
He does have a nice butt.
Sure, but not a big old bubble butt like Tom Cruise and Valkyrie.
No.
Nobody needs that.
He's a fit guy.
It's 8:53.
I just said that.
Well, a Happy New Year, everybody. We do hope you have a great and safe and wonderful, peaceful weekend. And we launch into this next year, which could very well be tumultuous, with clear eyes and a focus on what matters most in our lives and in our nation. We are honored and proud and grateful to be a part of your morning routine every single day and look forward to being so for many years to come. Happy New Year.